Hello guys, welcome back to another video here. Today I'll be taking a look at Winterstorm Ivy Part 1 and a New Year's Day Storm Part 2 of this video here. This is the satellite imagery of Winterstorm Ivy. As you can see, the clouds are starting to shift towards the east and north at the same time as a low pressure system is starting to form and makes its way towards the Midwest. But as you see the clouds start to disappear back towards the west and you still see white stuff not moving. That is snow on the ground here that stretches all the way from Idaho all the way down into northern parts of Arizona here. As this storm system starts to make its way up into the Midwest, more snow is likely to drop and more blizzard-like conditions are possible as the day goes on. Now, if you take a look at the National Weather Service here, you can see that they actually expanded the advisories and warnings for this system. They expanded the advisories all for all parts of Michigan and northwestern parts of Ohio. You can see they dropped the advisories over here for the Great Lakes, but did leave a couple advisories in parts of New York here. But as we focus back into the Midwest, you can see they did in fact expand these winter storm warnings across from South Dakota, Kansas, Missouri, Ohio, Iowa, Illinois, and Wisconsin here. But if you take a look down into some parts of Texas, you can see there's a winter storm watch here for the second part of the system. That's going to affect, again, a majority of the country here. Rain, snow, sleet, and ice, in fact, that could leave dangerous traveling conditions. You have some other advisories down here, a special weather statement here, and a dense fog advisory for the northern part of Texas here. But if you go back into the northwest here, you can see you do have, in fact, a couple winter weather advisories and warnings for the system that is coming through right now. If you take a look at the winter weather map here, you can see that it is a lot colder than expected so far across Iowa and Illinois here, and even into parts of northern Missouri here. You can see you have the heavy banding down into southern parts of Iowa, making its way into Des Moines and Cedar Rapids, and it's starting to snow as of 3:23 p.m. here Eastern Time. It is starting to snow in Chicago. So far, the extent of this storm has been a little bit greater than what the models have been showing, so I really do think this storm will exceed in parts of Iowa and parts of Chicago, especially in the northern suburbs here when you eventually fill in, and it could be all snow depending how cold it stays. Right now, it is just 28 degrees northwest of Chicago, and in just north of Des Moines, it is 23. So far, it's a lot colder. And right by the mixing here, it is only 24. And when you are mixing down here, you are only 31. And just north of Kansas, you are 30 degrees. So once that does fill in, that could be a major ice event right there for you. But if we go back into North and South Dakota, you can see it's starting to move away. The snow, as the storm slowly makes its way northeast, you can see these still have heavy banding in some parts of this snow blob that you could call. But otherwise, it is just bone cold chilling when you have the snow on the ground and wind is coming out of the north going straight to the south, and otherwise you shall be cold throughout this whole time. Now, if you take a look at the temperatures here throughout the whole northern part of the country, you can see it is 15 degrees in northern parts of Minnesota, and by the UP, it's 15 degrees as well. If you go a little bit closer in on Chicago, you are in between the 28 and 31 degree range, and currently it looks like to be 31 degrees, 32 degrees in fact, just by you. But if you actually go into the south, it's actually 26 degrees in these heavy bands of snow. You may ask, why is that happening even though Chicago's north of that? It's because when you have heavy snow like this, that brings down the cold air aloft and it cools the temperatures all around you. So if you get in this heavy banding right here, your temperatures could drop 3 degrees and maybe even 4 degrees. If that does happen, that's going to make it harder and harder to change over. So once Chicago does get in these heavier bandings, which is about to be soon, this could be helping you a lot in the future because you may drop in temperatures and could keep you snow for longer. If we take a look at tropical tidbits here, right now we have the GFS up. This is the 12Z run of the GFS, so this is 2 hours behind where it should be at this time, but it does show you still have a couple bands of snow in this area by Chicago Metro, but otherwise you still have that heavy snow in southern Iowa all the way down into Missouri. But as we go to the next slide, you can see that snow starts to expand. By 7 p.m. tonight, Chicago is still snowing, and southern parts of Iowa could change over the rain. But at this time, it does that seems unlikely due to how cold you already are. And again, some parts of Des Moines is around 26 degrees, which is going to make it really hard to change over because you need to go up almost 8 degrees to change over. And that's just a mix. And then if we continue here by 1 a.m. tonight, actually, Chicago is starting to sleet in just west of Chicago's freezing rain. Freezing rain is when you have warm air aloft and it's all warm, melting all ice and snow up there, but your ground level is still 32 degrees or below. And when the rain comes down, it freezes on everything. So that's the danger of freezing rain. Freezing rain causes ice everywhere, which is hard to travel, makes it hard to travel anywhere, and that's when you should stay off the roads. Freezing rain, in my opinion, is more dangerous than snow because you can't really see ice, especially black ice. You can't really see it, but you can see snow everywhere because it's white. As we continue here by 7 a.m. tomorrow, the snow starts to change over to rain in southern parts of Michigan as the new cold front boundary starts to sweep through, and still parts of the UP and northern parts of Michigan is still all snow here. And by 1 p.m., it should be mostly all rain in Michigan. And then as time goes on, it eventually all moves out and heads towards the east. Now, the GFS, this is still to come snowfall for parts of the area, so it does show at least 5 inches plus in these purple colors right here that stretches all the way from Michigan, all the way back up into Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, Missouri, and even into parts of Kansas and southern parts of South Dakota here. Some parts of the UP could see that, but I do think that will be mostly from lake effect here. And then your 8-inch pluses anywhere in this pink. You do have some pockets of that in Kansas and Nebraska, and you do have that all over Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, and southern parts of Wisconsin. Not just quite there in Michigan. But as we take a look at the next system that's going to come through the northern part of the country, you can see down by Texas, the system starts to form on the boundary that starts to come down. This cold air is going to funnel this storm cold air and cause some snow for some parts of Texas. A high pressure system funnels counterclockwise, so it funnels the cold air south of it. So as you can see here, you do have cold right in these areas, which could leave some freezing rain and some snow the farther north you go. But if you go into Texas, you can see it is snowing by 7 a.m. And if you take a look at the next slide here, shown by the GFS, that snow starts to expand and actually get quite heavy. Even though it might not show it, it really is snowing still. If you go back here, you can see snow in southern and central parts of Texas, and as the storm moves north, that snow sticks around and could possibly expand. As shown right here, you have the high pressure funneling cold air to some parts of the central U.S., and then as time goes on, the high pressure moves into the northeast. Again, counterclockwise funnels cold air down into the northeast, causing a massive amount of freezing rain here. Depending how strong this high gets and how cold it gets depends on how much cold air is left. Will there be enough cold air to have enough snow, or will it just be enough to have just freezing rain? At the time, at 1 p.m. it looks to be just freezing rain for northeast, maybe some pockets of snow here. But otherwise, in the Midwest, you are snowing pretty hard, especially in Iowa and parts of Wisconsin and central northern Michigan. But then again, Michigan does change over the rain just like the last system, but Wisconsin and Iowa could stay all snow. But if you take a look into the Northeast, you still have freezing rain, and then the snow field starts to expand here. As the storm moves out, you have another system that could form, depending on how much room is left. Let's say the storm tracks up here, you could have some snow for coastal parts of the U.S., but this is a little bit far-fetched. And if you take a look at total snowfall hours, we have to go back a little just to see the accurate forecast from the GFS. Higher elevations could see a foot in Texas, but that's a little bit high for some parts of Texas. But as you can see, there's a big amount of snowfall that goes from Oklahoma, Kansas, and into Missouri here, and even northern parts of Arkansas. And then as you make its way, the storm makes its way north, Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Indiana, northern parts of Ohio, could see a couple, if not several inches of snow. And then we look into the Northeast here. The Northeast could, no, this snow that it's showing on the coast, it will not snow at the coast. There might be freezing rain, but there definitely won't be snow at the coast here. But if you go more inland, such as Pennsylvania, New York, Massachusetts, and Vermont, there could be several inches of snow here. Depending on how cold it gets, once again, depends how strong is the high pressure. This is a new NAM that just came out, and it looks almost similar to the radar here. If we go back to the radar real quick, you could see this is a freezing rain mix line just south and just a little bit on the border of Iowa and Missouri. And if we go back to the NAM, it's similar but not exactly correct. Then again, it does not show snow back into Chicago, Metro, Wisconsin, Illinois, so this is a little bit not of the correct model as of now. It's not accurately predicting what is on the radar right now, but then again, it's still not a bad model to look at. You can see the storm eventually moves out, keeping Michigan mostly snow, at least on that model run. And then you have the storm coming up to the north, and it's not fully out yet, but you can see that big swath of rain and freezing rain coming up into the Midwest. You are starting to snow in the western part of the system, such as Oklahoma and Kansas, but this is total snowfall, at least shown by the NAM at 57 hours. It shows 20 inches in Texas, surprisingly, and still another foot to come in parts of Iowa. If you take a look at the HRRR model, which is a really good model if you want to accurately predict, let's say, 12 hours out or so, you could see if we go back, it's very similar to the radar. This is just at 3, and now that's at 4. It's a little bit behind with the precipitation, but it accurately predicts Iowa and Missouri rain and snow line down here. If we continue, you can see at least on HRRR, Illinois and Chicago starts to get into that snow by 7 p.m. And by, let's say, 11 p.m., Chicago starts to change over to wintry mix and actually barely changes over to rain here, at least for the HRRR. The HRRR gives Chicago Metro 3 to 4 inches, and just northwest of that by Iowa, it gives you 8 to possibly 10 inches of snow, but 10 inches is the highest point that you can go, at least still to come, and that's pretty much it from the HRRR. This is a European model from Pivotal Weather here, and it pretty much shows, at least by 12 p.m. it looks like, it accurately predicts a rain and snow line for Iowa and Missouri here. As you can see, this is around 6 p.m.-ish. It has snow falling in the Chicago Metro, northern Illinois, and Iowa. Still pretty much all snow except the extreme southern parts of the state. In the state border of Iowa and Missouri is a mix, possibly going over the rain, but the European keeps it mostly a mix. As time goes on, at least for the European, it mostly keeps Michigan all snow until the very last minute and changes over to rain. But then again, you still have that storm in the south that comes up. Oh, sorry about that. The storm in the south comes up, giving Texas snow, and then eventually Kansas, Oklahoma, and then you have a big swath of that freezing rain that comes up into the Northeast, Midwest, and in the central part of the country. Chicago looks like to be freezing rain at this point, and then it looks to go over to rain eventually. But Iowa, Wisconsin, and parts of Michigan could stay all snow, and then the storm heads towards the Northeast here, and then after that could be again a system that could affect the Northeast depending on how organized and how much room is left for that system. If you take a look at the European here for the snowfall still to come, it gives an accurate prediction of what the GFS shows and the NAM and HRRR show, possibly 8 to 10 inches still to come, some parts of Iowa, Wisconsin, and Illinois. And then as time goes on, your storm in the south comes up and gives some snowfall for the parts of the country, especially Texas dropping. It drops 15, 16, 20 inches just like the new NAM. So the European and the NAM are in agreement for the exact same location to get 20 inches, and I really do think that's a higher elevation, but I would cut that total at least by 1/4, so you could get maybe a foot in that area. But as you go up, this area had 10 inches, so you could see another 5, maybe even 8 inches in that area, depending how hard the snow comes down and how little mixing do you get. Now, if you take a look at the 6-hour total accumulation, you can see how heavy the snow gets. So some parts of the area, you can see this is just in 6 hours, you get an inch per hour in that area, causing 6 inches in 6 hours. And if you continue with this system all the way in the south, actually, it gives Texas a pretty healthy dumping of snow here. If you go down here, this looks to be a 7-8 print per 6 hours, so an inch to maybe 2 inches per hour, depending how heavy it comes down, and then it goes out and eventually leaves the United States. This is a National Weather Service snowfall outlook, at least through 1 p.m. Wednesday. You can see that this is the 1 to 3 line that stretches all the way back from North Dakota all the way through Detroit and the rest of Michigan. Over here in New York, this is lake effect snow happening right now that could give you an inch or two depending on the banding. This is your 3 to 5 inch range right through here that stretches all the way from western Minnesota all the way through northern Michigan, and then your 5 to 8 inch is right through here. That stretches from Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, and western parts of Michigan. And then your 8 to 12 inch, surprisingly, is from Iowa, northern parts of Illinois, and southern parts of Wisconsin. This is snowfall still to come as of right now, as of 3:30 Eastern Time. But as you continue on through January 1st, you could see the New Year's Day storm as this starts to load in for you guys. You could see that Texas could see a pretty healthy snowstorm here. As this loads in, you could see the National Weather Service is actually giving parts of Texas close to 6 inches here, 10 inches as well. And this pocket right here looks to be close to a foot, if not over, once that loads. We'll go back to that. It gives Oklahoma City an inch, and then the western parts of the area 1 to 2. As you make your way up more north, it gives Kansas City 2 to 3, possibly. Mostly ones around Kansas, though. But into the northeast, it really doesn't give the northeast much. It gives Indiana, southern parts of Illinois, parts of Ohio an inch, maybe according to the inch. But you have to go into higher elevations at least for this storm to happen in the northeast, such as Maine looks to get 4 to possibly 6 inches. The higher terrain of New York looks to get 4 to maybe 6 inches as well. And if we go back to Texas and get a closer look, for my friends in Texas, it looks like 11 inches in that spot, 11, 10 inches in that area, and it looks like to be a pretty hefty snowstorm for that area. This is my snowfall still to come as of 3:40 p.m. for the parts of the Midwest here. You could see from North Dakota all the way down into Nebraska, into Missouri, and parts of Illinois and Detroit. You can see another 1 to 3 inches, but parts of these areas still haven't snowed yet, so that's pretty much what you will get in your final total. Your 3 to 5 still to come stretches from most eastern points of North and South Dakota, very extreme northeastern part of Nebraska, all the way down into Iowa, parts of Illinois, Michigan, and back all the way up into Wisconsin. Your 5 to 8 range still to come is from Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Michigan. And then your 8 to 10 inch range is from just north of Iowa City, just near Cedar Rapids, Madison, Wisconsin, and just northwest of Rockford. Again, this is their snowfall still to come as at 3:40 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, there's a lot of uncertainty with this New Year's Day storm, but anywhere in this pink is your greatest chance to see heavy snowfall that stretches all the way down from Texas all the way into Oklahoma, Kansas, Iowa, Missouri, parts of Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan, and then as the storm heads to the east, the northeast gets involved into northern parts of New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, just north of Massachusetts here. Depending on how cold it gets, Pennsylvania could be in that range, but as of right now, I put it to the north since most models do, in fact, have that snow mostly to the north of Pennsylvania. And again, the coast could, from anywhere from Ohio, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and again, possibly down into the coast of New York, New Jersey, you could see a very significant freezing rain event. This could be a very impactful storm on New Year's Day, but anyways guys, have a great New Year's Day and enjoy the holidays as your time goes on.